I said earlier, my name is Beth Anz. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you for being with us today. I'm wearing a shirt that says Stars and Stripes and Human Rights, because human rights we'll be talking about today. Yay! We're going to talk about the Ware Lecture today, which is something that UUs do every year at our General Assembly. So we're going to talk about the history of the Ware Lecture and its impact. And we're going to start on May 18th, 1966. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressed the Unitarian Universalist gathering in Hollywood, Florida. Dr. King began his Ware Lecture, Don't Sleep Through the Revolution, by recalling his long relationship with our tradition. He said, my own personal experience with Unitarian Universalism began when I was a student at Boston University back in the early 50s. I can remember on several occasions visiting Arlington Street Church, where young distinguished Dr. Greenlee pastored at that time. And Dr. King continued, in the early years of the bus boycotts in Montgomery, Alabama, 3 of your ministers visited and encouraged me during that trying and often difficult period. I refer to David Cole, Alfred Hawkins, and my dear friend who's on the platform tonight, Homer Jack. In that speech, he reminded us that he worked with Reverend Jack in Montgomery, in Ghana, in Washington, and in the World Peace Effort, and in Selma. He spoke of the support of UUs offered before and after the death of Reverend James Reeb, calling Reeb's murder a shining moment of faith. Dr. King here is referring to the events after Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965. Bloody Sunday is where peaceful marchers were violently attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He knew the nation needed a moral compass and a moral witness in that moment. And in the weeks that followed, Dr. King issued an urgent call for clergy to join him in Selma. And an interfaith mobilization answered that call, and among them were Unitarian Universalists, including Reverend James Reeb and volunteer Viola Liuzzo, both of which were killed while standing for justice in 1965. And a year later, in 1966, Dr. King spoke to our General Assembly to honor Reverend Reeb and to share his appreciation to UUs for answering the call of conscience. At his Ware Lecture, Dr. King used the story of Rip Van Winkle, who slept through the American Revolution, to illustrate the responsibility of the church. He said, certainly the church has great responsibility, because when the church is true to its nature, it stands as a moral guardian of its community and its society. And Dr. King continued, it has always been the role of the church to broaden horizons, to challenge the status quo, and to question and to break mores if necessary. I'm sure that we all agree that the church has a major role to play in this period of social change. And indeed, Unitarian Universalists have answered that call of history in every generation, standing up in movements for abolition, labor rights, civil rights, LGBTQ+ liberation, and immigrant justice. And through the Ware Lecture, we have lifted up leaders whose moral courage echoes through our UU values. This year, in 2026, our Ware Lecturer was Reverend Marianne Edgar Buddy, who you may remember that name. She met the moment of neighbor vilification with courage and clarity. Reverend Buddy, you may remember, gained national attention when she asked President Donald Trump to have mercy on our transgender children and immigrant families during a 2025 prayer service. Now that invitation extends the tradition of inviting individuals who meet the moment in our society with courage and conviction. They remind us of the words of the past UU president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. This is no time for a casual faith. Reverend Buddy spoke truth to power and advocated for the inherent worth and dignity of humanity. This is a value shared by both her Episcopalian and our Unitarian Universalist faiths. She joined the prestigious history of the Ware Lecture. The Ware Lecture was from a grant given in 1920 by Harriet E. Ware of Milton, Massachusetts. She bequeathed $5,000 to the American Unitarian Association for its unrestricted use. Of course, this is before the merger of Unitarians and Universalists. This is the Unitarians. And 2 years later, on the evening of May 24th, 1922, the first Ware Lecture was given by Reverend Frederick W. Norwood, a Congregationalist pastor of City Temple in London, England. And although the text is lost, we know he often spoke on modern Christian ethics and moral responsibility. That ethical and moral responsibility is one of the ways Unitarian Universalists have answered the question of what is America for the last 250 years. Throughout the 20th and now the 21st century, we've amplified the voices of many moral leaders at our General Assembly. Some of these include Dr. King, as mentioned before, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, Howard Thurman, Shirley Chisholm, Kurt Vonnegut, Norman Lear, Julian Bond, Cornel West, and many, many others. To describe this UU moral responsibility to our nation and to the world, We can turn to the words of acclaimed and often banned novelist Kurt Vonnegut. In his 1986 Ware Lecture to us, Vonnegut embraced his humanist identity and identified himself as a Christ-worshiping agnostic. Now, his father and grandfather were actually both Unitarians. They were architects, and together they designed a Unitarian church building in Indianapolis, Indiana. In his later years, Kurt Vonnegut dedicated his life to the cause of peace, freedom, and environmental stability. And we have long championed the causes of diversity, equity, and inclusion here. The first woman to address Unitarians at the Ware Lecture was Jane Addams, who spoke way back in 1931. And she was the first American woman, Jane Addams, to receive a Nobel Peace Prize. She was the founder of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and Hull House. Hull House provided housing and child care facilities for working mothers. She was an advocate for women's rights, labor reform, and international peace. Across 2 centuries shaped by war and American might, Unitarians and UUs affirmed peace and human rights throughout the Ware speakers, with speakers like Unitarian minister John Hayes Holmes in 1938, who was both a prominent pacifist minister, and he was also the co-founder of both the NAACP and the ACLU. He was also a vocal opponent of war and militarism and an early national voice for nonviolence. In more modern times, historian Rashid Khalidi in 2007 spoke as a Palestinian American about a deeper understanding of war, colonialism, and the moral responsibility of nations. Linus Pauling in 1964 won 2 Nobel Prizes, the first in chemistry, pioneering our understanding of molecular disease, DNA, quantum chemistry, and molecular biology, and created the foundation for all of those sciences. The second was a Nobel Peace Prize for his activism against nuclear weapons. His vocal global campaigning against atmospheric nuclear weapons testing eventually led to the 1963 Particle Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. And we continue that tradition in 1984 with Dr. Helen Caldicott, who is an Australian physician, author, and anti-nuclear advocate, and she founded several associations dedicated to opposing the use of nuclear power. The Ware Lecture also highlighted many more voices who shaped our American legacy. These include Morris Dee in 2000, who co-founded the Southern Poverty Law Center, Desmond Meade in 2021. Desmond is the president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, who restores the rights to vote for incarcerated individuals in Florida. You may recognize that name because we were also privileged to have him speak with us a couple years ago here at the UU Church at Brevard. He co-shared that invite in 2021 with Stacey Abrams, another name you might know. She is famous for founding Fair Fight Action, an organization that combats voter suppression and promotes fair elections. And after the 2020 election, she met the moment and took action. Again, a principle that she shares with Unitarian Universalism. In 2022, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi wrote the best-selling book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and it advocates that there is no neutrality when it comes to race. He spoke to us in 2022. Rather than a lecture, this one was a conversation between Dr. Kendi and then UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. They discussed the relationship between racist systems and racist ideologies. When asked about the role of the church and the people of faith in the anti-racist movement, Dr. Kendi describes the difference between producers and consumers of racist ideas. I found this very interesting. While moral persuasion won't work on producers of racist ideas, consumers can be reached. He explained that the church can help with those behavioral changes. Dr. Kendi said, every single person has the power to resist. Conversations can be powerful tools for the movement. One of my favorites, in 1995, Ware lecturer Norman Lear was one of the most influential storytellers in American history. He spoke to us in 1995 and created shows like All in the Family and The Jefferson and many, many others. And they tackled stories about race, gender, identity, poverty, and war. Our Ware lecturers show us how to use our voices, use them boldly, truthfully, and in service to justice. Some other notables are Amara Jones in 2025. She's a political journalist and transgender advocate. She is the founder of Translash Media, which produces content to shift the current culture of hostility about transgender people in the US. And Brittany Packett, who spoke to us in 2018, who founded Campaign Zero, a policy platform to end police violence. Brittany was also appointed a member of the Ferguson Commission and President Obama's task force on the 21st century politics. And you can see we always try to meet the moment as things are happening. Unitarian Universalists join with other faith traditions in solidarity and answer the call, standing up for the rights of others. Other faith leaders are people like Sister Simone Campbell, who in 2014 was the executive director of the Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, the famous Nuns on the Bus. In 2010, she wrote the famous Nuns letter supporting the healthcare reform bill, which was important in passing the Affordable Care Act. Faith leaders like this year's Ware Lecture, Reverend Marion Buddy, show us that as Unitarian Universalists how to speak truth to power. And they remind us that Dr. King called faith leaders to Selma in 1965. So we too must hear that call today, to join with people of faith to answer the call. In the words of Dr. King, come to Selma, come now, stand with us. Reverend Buddy was among the many who heard a similar call to Minneapolis in 2026 to protect immigrant families. She told UU World magazine earlier this year, I am keenly aware that what is happening here is happening across the country, so I feel it's important for us to have a national witness. And later that year, as voting rights were stripped away, UUs once again came to Selma. No matter the place, we continue to hear the call. Come now, stand with us. So on this 250th anniversary of these United States of America, I ask you to hear the call. Listen to the words of these leaders who have spoken to us over the years. Hear the call of justice, the call of peace, the call of equity, and the call of compassion. We have shown how UUs lift the voices of the movement. Let us remember the words of Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. This is no time for a casual faith. May we hear these words. May we meet the moment of this great experiment we call the United States of America. And to America, I say happy birthday. May we live more fully towards this promise. Thank you for your time.